Both my colleague Joanne Tucker, who is over here, who is the lead of member support, and I are really pleased to welcome you here to our inaugural Transforming our Health System series session. And I'd like to once again thank those that are here in person here at the General Campus, but also those that are joining online from other campuses, hospitals, and organizations in Eastern Ontario. At this point, I'm going to also thank Dr. Virginia Roth, our Chief of Staff here at the Ottawa Hospital, and Mr. Cameron Love, President and CEO of the hospital, to being here and also to provide us with some introductory comments for our series and our session, respectively. So I'll turn things over to Virginia. Yes.
Good morning. It is really an honor to be able to kick off this amazing series, Transforming the Healthcare System from Evidence to Impact. I think any of us who've been a patient or had a family member who is a patient or cared for a patient can recognize that we do indeed face challenges. And often the challenges that we face day to day are not necessarily created within our walls, but are a system of the greater health the healthcare system. So, I think the series was created in response to really take a step back to say, how can we go beyond simply identifying the challenges to try to find solutions and improve the care and support our teams and really do things differently. This really very, very timely because we launched our new strategic plan about a year ago, and that really was intended to set the foundation to going beyond the patient in front of us and the walls of our hospital, really look at the community and the health system as a whole to say, what can we do differently? There's no doubt in my mind that we can lead the way in Ottawa and at the Ottawa Hospital. And in fact, we already have in many initiatives that we've undertaken. We've served as a model across the province. We've got great leadership teams. We've got committed clinicians. We've got brilliant researchers and innovators. And, having this kind of a space and an opportunity to bring everybody together and share ideas, break down those sort of traditional silos and really get a chance to dig in, I think is going to be truly will be invaluable. So each session will spotlight ideas and initiatives that will push us to think differently about how we deliver care, how we collaborate, and how really the Department of Medicine, the Ottawa Hospital, University of Ottawa, OHRI, as partners, how we truly can transform the future of healthcare. We'll hear about projects in motion, system-level insights, and emerging models, like today's focus on Hospital at Home. But more importantly, the sessions are designed to be interactive, and Dr. Maniat has already introduced the concept that you're not here just to listen. This is truly about discussion, asking probing questions, and really building that shared sense of purpose around what we want to do. I want to take a moment to recognize Dr. Maniata and Joanne. I think this is brilliant. Seeing it sort of come from a concept to here we actually are, kicking the series off is really wonderful. And everyone involved in organizing this. Thank you to our speakers today and our future speakers, and for all of you for participating. I'm really looking forward to it.
Thanks very much, Virginia. And we're going to ask Mr. Cameron Love to come and provide some comments about today's session specifically.
Thanks, Jerry. Good morning, everyone. So I want to build a little bit on what Virginia said, provide just a little bit more context. I think many of you have been in this organization for a number of years. And I think when I look back, and let's go back pre-pandemic, I think for the last probably 25 years since we were formed in 1998, a lot of what we focused on is what do we do as a hospital? And we've made tremendous progress over a couple decades of focusing on a hospital. And I'm going to be somewhat flippant, but we never really worried about people before they got to the hospital, and we definitely don't worry about people when they left the hospital. And I think what's changing and evolving across all systems, and this is part of where we're trying to move towards our strategic plan, is we have to stop thinking about being a hospital versus what do we do to become a health system? And it's a different context. And I mean, you all deal with like thousands of patients yearly coming into hospital. Very, very, very few of them get their first illness when they come to us, and very, very few of them go home without any type of care support whatsoever. And so as if you look across globally, and I think if you look up provincially, many provinces have started to talk about how do they create systems of care and population health. And if you look globally in other countries at some of the leading sort of top leading countries in healthcare, they never really talk about hospitals anymore. What they talk about is healthcare systems and how do we build population health models, which is in essence how we've changed our strategic plan to start talking about over the next decade. How do we move from becoming a hospital to becoming a health system? And I think at the core of that are things like this initiative. And it's one of those things where, healthcare is often difficult to change and it moves at a bit of a snail's pace sometimes. But I think the pressure we have with the demand of the amount of growth of population, the number of patients we're seeing, there's probably a bigger onus than ever to start to really think innovatively. And thankfully this week is, ironically, I think it's Innovation Week within Ottawa. And this is a perfect sort of segment within that, is to think very differently in terms of how we provide care. And so when I think about, and lots of people call it, home in the hospital, hospital in the home. The whole idea here is that we run about somewhere in the range of 12 or 1,300 beds today. If you think about the plans we have going forward, we will probably be over the course of the next decade, maybe 1,800, maybe 1,900, maybe 2,000 beds. The bulk of those beds of growth, though, are not acute care beds. And if you think about if it's done well, we could have 100 beds in the community in a home. They're just an extension of what we do as a program as a hospital. And so I think part of this is we really have to think through this, but I really want to congratulate the Department of Medicine for taking this on. I think it's more than just innovative. I don't think it's an if, I think it's more of a how. And how do we do this and how do we set this up to ensure we maintain quality of care, we're efficient in what we do, and it's integrated with what we do within programs. And so Jerry, Joanne Group, thank you very much for sort of leading this initiative. Dr. McCormick, thank you very much for coming and giving us your insights in terms of what you've done in BC, and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Cameron, and thanks again, Virginia, for those introductory comments for the series and this session, because that really sets a context for why we're having this conversation today. And what I wanted to do is also to give you a little bit of a sense of how this format's going to be for today's session. The idea was I had this in my head here that I wanted to have coffee with Ian and Yusuf and to just sit at a second cup, like maybe downstairs, and just sort of hear what their thoughts are about hospital at home and to have this conversation. But then we thought, it would be kind of neat to have people listen in on the conversation. But at some point, we want you to be part of the conversation as well. So at a certain point in the time that we have this morning, we're going to open things up. And for those that are in the room, it's a little easier. It's very traditional. Put your hands up. We have a microphone that will be raced over to you so that the people online can hear your question. For those that are online, you'll have two options to really connect with us. One is to use the raise hand feature, and we'll call upon you and get you to speak. Or you can use the chat feature, and Joanne is going to flag those comments and questions and throw them back into the audience here for us. So we'll have a little bit of a time for conversation about some of the concepts that our speakers are going to introduce to us. So at this time, let's get going. It's my pleasure to really welcome our two speakers for the session this morning. Our first speaker, Dr. Yusuf Tawil, is a graduate from the University of Montreal Medical School. He did his internal medicine residency training at McGill and then came to Ottawa to do his fellowship training, and he has stuck here since, which is awesome. He's a father. He always talks very proudly of his kids, and he has a special interest clinically with ambulatory care and has done preoperative assessments and vascular health and rapid referral clinic. So he's really well entrenched in the clinical space, but he also has personal interest with gardening and spending time in nature, which I hope he has time to do with all that busy stuff that he's doing. Our second speaker is Dr. Ian McCormick. He's a graduate of Queen's University, so just down the road from us, but then he decided to head out west to the greener pastures of UBC, where he did his residency and fellowship training. And Ian's been very heavily involved with leadership at UBC in the department and in the division, and playing roles such as CTU director and Vancouver General Site lead for the UBC division of GIM. He's currently an associate head in the from the VGH Department of Medicine. But he also has personal interests as well that are a little bit more focused on the hospital at home, which is how do you get people on social media to post about this stuff and to talk about the experiences so that people will get interested. So let's see if we can convert some of that into the conversation this morning, because we have an audience here and online that are interested and curious about this topic. So we're going to start with Yusuf. Maybe Yusuf, if you can give us a little bit of a sense, what is your role here at TOH with respect to the hospital at home program, and more importantly, why did you decide to take this on?
First of all, I have to thank everybody for being here and for you, Jay and Joanne, for organizing this. This wasn't my idea, but I jumped on the bandwagon when I heard about it because it was just too exciting to let go. Obviously, the reason I chose it is I have so much free time, and I figured, might as well do one more thing. But the reality of things actually is that, I was early mid-career. I've been at TOH now since 2017 as staff. And I was thinking with my division head, Krista, that, I wanted to branch into more leadership positions, more challenges. And to do that, I actually deliberately had cut back slightly on my clinical work, like in the 6 months prior. And when this idea came across, I'm like, well, I have the bandwidth, let me take this on. And so that's just on a personal level that I was thinking about more system level change as opposed to me helping my patients directly. And so when I heard about this, I figured, this is much better than what I'm doing right now for some of my patients who are stuck in non-conventional spaces in the hospital. Can I do better by having this set up? And so that's kind of where I got involved. My role right now at TOH, in terms of the hospital at home, is I'm the medical director for the hospital at home program starting in November of 2024. We've been working on building. We've had to pivot a few times, but that's really been the bulk of my effort with a huge TOH team involved as well.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Yusuf. It helps us set the stage for why you got involved. Now we're going to turn it over to Ian, and you've also been involved with the hospital at home program, but at Vancouver General. Can you give us a little bit of a sense of that position, that role that you've taken on there? And also the question, why did you take this on? What led you to take this piece on?
Yeah, no, I got roped into it too. So the origin story in BC is a little bit different. There are actually some physicians in Victoria who had gone to Australia, where hospital at home is very well established, and they came back and they said, we have to do this here. And so they got everything ready, and they went to the ministry and said, hey, let's do this. And the ministry said, we actually have to change the Hospitals Act. And they're like, what? And they're like, well, yeah, for the house to be considered a hospital bed, we have to change the Hospitals Act. And they're like, but the ministry was like, yeah, let's do this. We're actually ready for it. So they were very lucky that there was physician interest, and then someone had heard about this in BC and was employed at the ministry and said, let's do it. So they started a pilot program, and they got their pilot going, and then COVID hit, and they kept it going through COVID. But they realized what a great thing they were doing. And so they took it back and said, let's expand all across BC. And the ministry was like, let's do it. Everything was like, kind of gung-ho. It was the era of modern monetary theory truly hitting healthcare, where it's like, well, actually money can be created for free, which is literally true, but I don't want to talk about that today. Anyway, and then so they were like, let's expand. So we did version 1 of getting ready to have a hospital at home program in roughly 2021. And I remember my operations partner saying, like, I need a strong physician advocate for this. And I was like, am I really that person? But the more I read about it, the more I was like, this actually really sounds like a great thing. So I kind of fell in love with it from the literature. And then Michael Montalto, who's one of the sort of gurus of hospital at home worldwide, was kind enough to show up on Zoom and talk to us about it. And seeing him, the moral assurance that people have when they know what they're doing is completely right. I was like, this man knows that what he is doing is completely right. And I think that was the moment that I was truly sold. Anyway, the province canceled the first iteration because that was the time of retrenchment. And then we realized everything was hopelessly congested, and it got rolled out again in 2023. But we were kind of ready, and I already like had experience, like having read all this stuff, and I was like, let's do this. And so we got it going. So I've been the physician lead really since inception. I realized early on I wasn't going to be able to do it all myself, and we were very fortunate that all of my colleagues in general internal medicine were also game. So all the same people who did CTU kind of like rotated through it. And yeah, you enroll one patient at first. You're like, what are we doing? I'll always remember our first patient was a guy with multiple sclerosis who had a live-in care aide, and he had urosepsis, which he'd had many, many times before, and he needed ceftriaxone. And he was like, I am so happy to do this at home. And we did it. Like, he was getting ceftriaxone once a day, but I visited him twice a day because you're very paranoid. And then after that, it just flows. And now a year and a half later, about 10% of our medicine census is looked after with hospital at home, and it's going great. And I'm so pleased to be here because I love this model of care. Patients love this model of care. The providers who participate love it, and you just want to see it spread and grow. So thanks for the opportunity to be here.
No problem. And already within the first few comments from both of you, I've heard about, falling into leadership opportunities or being given sort of leave to do those kind of things, but also, there's a bit of flying by the seat of your pants kind of feeling as you're doing this kind of work. But there is data here, right? And there is some information that can help guide why we need to think about these kind of models. So maybe I'll turn over to Yusuf, because Yusuf, you had a couple of slides that you wanted to share with us just to show some of the data of, what's the problem that we're facing here in Ottawa in our health system, and what are some of those pressures, and some of those are things that Cameron and Virginia also alluded to as well in their introductory comments.
I mean, in a nutshell, as I said, like, I got involved in this because I think we need better care spaces to take care of our patients. And this is just a table from the Ontario Association of Hospitals, essentially, that was published recently, that shows the number of acute care beds in Ontario as opposed to the rest of Canada and OECD countries. And you can see we're kind of at the bottom tier of in terms of inpatient beds per 100,000. So we don't have a lot of funded hospital beds to take care of our patients. We also know our patient population is getting more complex. They're more sick. They're getting older because of the aging population. And so it's not going to get better moving forward in the next 10 years. It's actually, the pressure is going to increase, right? And on a personal level, because I always like to kind of bring back an experience to link into the idea. When I first got involved in this, I remember it was the winter months, and we were on one of our many surges, life for limb, can't accept anyone from the outside. We were deploying every surge, non-conventional bed that we had in the hospital to care for our patients. And, two cases stuck with me. One was an elderly lady who had presented with a stroke, fully independent, fully cognitively intact, but had a new stroke. And she was, again, bedded in one of these surge spaces. And we did our best to look after her. And I genuinely put an hour that day to try to get her a bed on the stroke unit. Like, I called the unit, I called all the medicine units. Can we move a patient from the stroke unit that doesn't need to be there to move this patient in? It was a whole endeavor. And eventually, 24 hours later, we got her in. But, that was not ideal for my patient, right? This was a patient who was in a suboptimal space and who had come in with for care, and I wasn't able to provide the care that she needed. Another case that struck me as well, that I remember vividly as well, is a patient who had spent 3 days in a hallway bed somewhere in the hospital. Again, elderly individual with a bit of heart failure, needs a bit of oxygen and IV diuretics to kind of improve, but fully independent, fully cognitively intact, and we had left that patient 3 days in a hallway somewhere. And then eventually, day 4, she made it up to the ward, at which point she was a lot better, by the way, because she was still getting the care. But, she wasn't happy about the fact, and rightfully so, that she was in the hallway. And what I found really interesting is I had been doing my rounds that day, and I had checked on her. And as I leave the room, I see one of our nurse leaders come in saying, hey, patient, you've been identified as one of our more stable patients who would qualify for a hallway bed. And this is a patient who had spent 3 days in a hallway bed already and had just got into a ward bed. And so I had to intervene. I said, no, she's done her time in the hallway. Find someone else. Find someone who's not a very elderly patient who we need to make sure they're sleeping at night, they're not getting delirious, they're keeping their mobility, they have access to a washroom, basic things. And so again, just as I paint this picture, I go back to the numbers in terms of the amount of beds we have per capita in Ontario, and then also our aging population, which I think is in the next slide. And I think we can do better. And that's kind of why, I feel strongly about this project. And also, I want to flag that we've grown accustomed to having these conventional care spaces to take care of patients to the point that we accept it as normal. Like, I don't bat an eye now. Oh, patient is in the hallway. We'll go find which hallway. We'll go find that hallway. We see them. We round on them when we move on. But that's not normal. Like, it's not normal for my elderly patient to come to hospital for care, for me to look after them in a hallway for days. That's not normal. So I'm just trying to challenge the status quo. Whereas, if this is not ideal, maybe being at home would be better. Maybe if I can do this safely, this would be a good project to take on.
Those are great observations, Yusuf, and thanks for bringing some of the data that helps us understand why this is increasingly becoming a problem. And then you superimpose that aging population level as well as an increasing chronicity of illness in our population. So this is going to become an increasingly challenging problem. Ian, based on some of the comments that Yusuf made in response to that previous question, as you reflect back into the program that you've helped establish in Vancouver, were there some similar stressors as you were, and I think you alluded to some of them in some of your introductory comments, but what were some of the key things that then helped you convince those in leadership, both within your hospital system as well as those at the ministry, that this was a really potentially a solution to this problem?
Yeah, I think it's the same everywhere, like the, surge level 3, 4, 5 announcements, hallway medicine, long length of stay in the ED. And the pressures are all there. Like VGH is a 1,000-bed hospital, like it's really big. But it has not run at less than 110% capacity in the last 2 years. And it seems to reach its kind of breaking point. Hospitals are a little bit like hearts. There's like this like compliance issue when like you load them too much and the pressure goes up like very, very quickly. And that's where we are every winter and periodically in the summer as well. And from a medicine point of view, that seems to be when we had like 180, 190 patients. So people were really looking for solutions. And in a lot of ways, like our length of stay has already been optimized. You can always decrease your census by decreasing length of stay, but biologically, patients are sicker and more complicated, and they get discharged as soon as they can. And so there is this role for providing substitutive care, like what you would normally do in acute care at home. And the whole hospital at home literature, I will summarize it in like 30 seconds. Like, patients love it. It's just as safe as inpatient care. And they're a little bit less likely to be readmitted on the whole. Like this has been very consistent looking across like multiple different programs over decades. And when you when we cracked our numbers after our first year, that's what we found too. Like, we could provide care that was safe. Our readmission rate was the same and patients loved it. And it's a great option for relieving that decongestion. Like, from an institutional point of view, how everyone is like discharge, discharge, discharge. Shifting a patient into a hospital at home bed is the same as a discharge. From the point of view of the institution, you buy a unit of flow. And for the last year, when we started, we managed to contribute 1 to 2 units of flow per day. As our program is getting bigger, that's becoming 2 to 4. And as our program grows to that 5 to 10% of the institution size will be buying 5 to 10 units of flow. And that means, one person will come out of the ED, one person can move out of the ICU, one more person can go into the OR because surgical and medical censuses like kind of collide. And in the meantime, you're looking after someone who loves their care. It's so much better to be at home. And I'll let you chat, Jerry, but there's lots of data to indicate like it's all the things that people hate about hospitals are instantly fixed by being at home. And it just shows.
I'll let you hold on to the mic, Ian. The reason is because when we asked you, okay, can you give us a little bit more detail about the hospital at home program and the experience at Vancouver General, you said, I can do you better. Here's a video. And so we're actually going to show the video. It's only a few minutes, but it really does give a flavor of what this program is in Vancouver and what the potentials are, and then we'll do a little debrief of the video. So some highlights and pearls that you think from both of you. So we'll come back in a couple minutes, but Peppa Pig is there.
I think the biggest benefit of hospital at home for the patients is that they get to recover in their own homes. We can do exactly the same things that we're doing in the hospital. We can give IV medications. They're having a physician visit every day. Nurses are coming and seeing them once or twice a day, but they don't have to be in a hospital bed.
The multidisciplinary team that cares for a patient in hospital at home is the same that you would get in the hospital.
We have an occupational therapist, a physiotherapist, rehab assistant, speech and language pathologist, and a social worker. And our multidisciplinary team can provide comprehensive treatment and supports to our patients.
The level of care is great. They're always there to answer questions if I had any. And they were pretty prompt when they say, I'll call you at 9. That means they will call at 9, and they're always available. That's the other thing.
I've been amazed at what we can actually look after at home that we would traditionally think has to be looked after in the hospital.
Once a patient is considered a candidate for hospital at home, that's when our education commences. So the patient will have one-on-one time with a patient care coordinator, a clinical nurse educator to go over all of the information and the technology provided.
They made me feel very part of the program, made me feel very relaxed and very capable of it. They were just so knowledgeable, and I just felt really safe with them.
I felt very comfortable because they had prepared me properly, and if I did have any questions, they were here for me or I could phone them.
While we appreciate having this kind of technology, we also have methods of pen and paper and writing down, and we are in contact with people via the phone and really want to make sure that we can reach a broad audience and that the technology shouldn't be a barrier to being part of hospital at home. Once the patient arrives home, the nurse will meet them there with all of the equipment and help them get set up.
We want the patients to feel empowered, supported, to ensure that they are fully part of their own care and they feel confident in being part of the hospital at home program.
With one phone call or with a call bell, a nurse would answer if there's any issues at all.
The virtual call bells are provided to each patient as an added layer of safety for being able to get a hold of nursing 24/7 in hospital at home. All they have to do is press the button and it's a direct line to nursing.
If a patient's medical needs require them to return to the hospital, or if there are any challenges, they always do have the option to return. This decision is usually made in collaboration with the patient, the hospital at home care team, and family.
And if at any point in their stay we felt that they needed to come back to the hospital, we would bring them back.
I think the sky's the limit for hospital at home because we can do the same job or even a better job in this wonderful environment where patients thrive.
You're in the comfort of your own home, but you're also getting the primo care that you need.
It was amazing to come home on this program. I slept so well. My appetite improved so well. My whole mental attitude changed. And also what was great was that just a call away, it was a hospital at home if I needed them.
I was 100% for it because I felt that it would be a quicker way for him to improve, and I knew they'd have the professional people to help us along the way.
I think the hospital at home program is going to markedly change the acute care patient's experience. We have the opportunity to provide acute care level services to people in their own homes. We adapt to the patient in their environment. We're not asking the patient to have to adapt to the institutional environment. I think it's an exciting program for healthcare in BC for us to be able to give patients this opportunity.
Just pausing for the music to finish here.
Yeah, we play the music when we visit people.
Well, Ian, that's really helpful. Because it's one thing to read the papers, and I've flipped through some of those articles and just to see what's online in this space, but to see and hear patient voices talking about their experience. It's one thing to hear it from the hospital perspective, but to see that side. Are there some key pearls that you want us to sort of think through as we think about the hospital at home program?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you can really do it. One of the biggest things I heard before I started was from Michael Montalto, and he said, when you enroll people, you should feel a little bit like, "Ooh, can we do this?" And he's like, if you're not feeling that a little bit, you're not enrolling people who are sick enough. And he's like, it works out. And I think that's the big thing, is it works out. Patients are so grateful. They will tell you what's going on. They will do what you say for a chance to be at home. They are happy to come back to the hospital if they need to. They're happy to come back for tests in exchange for that opportunity to sleep in their own beds. And they really do better. And that's what keeps you going as a provider. A lot of our nursing staff are burnt out ICU nurses. Basically, they self-identify that way. I'm not like imposing that on them. And they, one of them, Dana was telling me, it's like, as a nurse, you kind of look for these expressions of gratitude for what you're doing. And, I would maybe get that once every 2 weeks. And she's like, now I get that like 3 or 4 times a day. Just because people are so happy to be receiving that care at home. And it's not like sham care. Like, we really are doing the same things that we would do in hospital. Like when you, I was going to prepare a slide, but it has that embedded video, and I wasn't sure it would work because they never do. But it was just like me kind of zooming down with my iPhone on the list of diagnoses, and it's septic elbow, right-sided heart failure, renal transplant sepsis, lymphoma, tumor lysis syndrome, like all these things that you would very typically see on a CTU ward. You can actually look after at home. And it's really just a shift in how you perceive care, but it's also having a team that you have the faith can do it. And we were very fortunate at VGH that our vision was always, no, we're going to provide acute care. We will have the same team that a CTU ward team has. We have very capable nurses, and we've just learned there's all kinds of stuff we can do once we have that team. And you can do it safely.
Thanks very much, Ian. Yusuf, as you've been hearing some of the stuff, saw the video, as you have been thinking into this space, and you've connected with not just Ian, but you've told me you've connected with pretty much every single person who's involved with these type of programs across this country. What is your vision? What are you hoping that hospital at home here at the Ottawa Hospital would look like, and what would that look like for patients?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, like I've spent last 6, 8 months kind of delving into this topic, and I have reached out to many people who are already doing it, like Ian, who graciously accepted to kind of share his experience and to come here today. But I've spoken to people in Victoria from the Island Health team. I've spoken to Calgary, to the Drew General folks in Montreal. So people who are actually have been doing it for a while. And really, our vision is to provide acute care in the comfort of people's homes. Bring TOH to the home instead of bringing the patient to TOH. And for that to happen, there are some barriers, right? And we've had to deal with that from the get-go. One of them is, in Ontario, the Hospital Act, Public Hospitals Act stipulates that admitted patients are admitted physically to the hospital, right? So same as in BC, we need high-level advocacy from our hospital leadership to try to change the Hospital Act so that we can count these patients as admitted patients as they are. Other things is, again, because of that, we can't use hospital funding for these patients. I can't even use a hospital lab, for God's sake. So I have to send them to, the lab is going to be drawn and sent to a private lab. So that's kind of one of the things. The other thing is, again, there's no way to pay for physician care, to compensate physicians for their care, because again, in the current billing schemes, there's nothing that exists that can cover hospital at home. So that is something, and I've been very engaged with the OMA from the get-go. I've presented to the hospital medicine chief and the section, and it went very well. They were very receptive, and they've moved it forward to the negotiations team. But we know how well negotiations have been going. It's been going to arbitration for the last couple of years. Like, it's just nothing is moving, right? I'm even reached out to the board of directors of the OMA, and I've got a meeting with them recently, and I'm trying to angle it differently to see if we can get this passed through. So a lot of advocacy going on to try to get this to succeed. But the other thing is, as you mentioned, Ian, if you look at the literature, like what works well in terms of having this higher acuity model of hospital at home is to have experienced bedside nurses, right? And because of, again, the funding we have, we can only use community nursing for now, which is we have, again, pivoted to go with for now. But if we are going to expand this into a grand, actual hospital home program, I need us to be able to use, TOH pharmacy support, TOH nursing with experienced nurses, allied health, etc. That would be the full-fledged program. Other places have done it differently. For example, Calgary, they have used advanced care paramedics, and it works really, really well for them. I've met with the program director there, Dr. Michelle Grinman, and she's very happy with how things are going. So there's different ways to make it work, and that's why for now we said, you know what, we can't get what we want. We're going to move ahead with phase one, which is really community nursing. We are taking less acute patients because, again, we're still kind of getting our feet wet here. But every person I've spoken to said that, once you launch the program, you realize you can take of sicker patients because it is safe. So that is kind of the ultimate goal, is take care of sick patients at home. But now we're going to start with a mildly sick or mild acuity model and hopefully build up on that. That is the vision, really, is to be able to build it, to show proof of concept that it actually works, it is safe, and then to scale it so we can increase the numbers, and then to disseminate it. So I would love to share this with other divisions and departments in the hospital, with the rest of Ontario, really. If we can make it work in our context, why can't they do it? Because, as you mentioned, bed pressures are the same, not across the province, only countrywide. Like, we all have the same aging population, not enough beds, et cetera, et cetera. So if we can create these programs and scale and disseminate, that would be really the true win here, right? Because as a clinician, I love my job. I'm so blessed. I'm very fortunate in what I do. But when I go see my patients, I was on service last week, I had, 20, 30 patients under my care, and I do my best to take care of them. But imagine if we can get this launched and succeed, I can impact the care, and my team can impact the care of hundreds, thousands more across the province. And that's really the goal, is for us to make this work at TOH and to disseminate it.
I appreciate those comments there, Yusuf, and especially sort of articulating where you see not only your hope for hospital at home here at TOH, but you've given all of us some homework. And I know that there are some senior leaders here from the Ottawa Hospital that are here in our audience, and others that may be online as well. Thank you, Ian and Yusuf, for taking some time with us this morning and to really giving us some insights into both the experience in Vancouver for this program, and Yusuf, your vision and plans for things here in Ottawa. I have a couple of pearls or things that I'm going to take away from myself. One is that there is data behind this model. This is not just an idea, but there has been experiences in other jurisdictions. People have studied it from an experience perspective, but also from a hard data perspective in terms of the care that's provided. This can be done safely with a high positive experience, both for people who are receiving the care and those providing. That's one key thing for myself. I also take away that there is a need for leadership, but it's a leadership team, not just individuals that are going to be really needed to move this forward. And the experience that you've had in Vancouver really is a testament that that leadership extends not just from within a division department, but also to the institution and even to the health ministry. So it's a real widespread of space that has to really be engaged in this conversation to make this work. And finally, I think we've alluded to this right up front, which is we've got a growing challenge here in terms of healthcare, and it's not an Ottawa specific problem. This is right across this country that we don't have enough beds. So this is a novel strategy to try and find ways to increase those beds without actually thinking about brick and mortar kind of solutions. And I think if we can do that, and one of the papers that Ian, you had flipped to us, talked about a 200-bed hospital that's not a hospital, which was remarkable that there's a program that's out there that has 200 beds. So think about that from an Ottawa perspective. That's almost the size of the Montfort or the Queensway in terms of beds potential. That is being brought online through the use of technology and novel approaches. So it helps us think a little bit differently because we know we're experiencing the art and challenges of building a new campus here. It takes a long time for that building to come online. And so if we can turn the switch on some of these things and bring increased capacity through other ways, why not? And I think the other piece that I'd like to throw out there is that we have to be scholarly as we do this work. So as we do this work, can we proactively collect data that helps us determine not that this is a good idea, it feels good, which alludes to that comment that you made earlier, Ian, but rather that here's the data that shows that it's safe, appropriate, and people are having the right outcomes. So with that, I'm going to thank our speakers. Ian McCormick, thank you for coming. I know you were here in town, but thank you for extending your stay to be with us this morning. And safe travels back. And Yusuf, happy working on this one. And I hope you've engaged a lot of people that will be tapping you on the shoulder and saying, "Tell me more about this. How can we think about this within our division or the rest of the department as well?"
Yeah, I have to say it's been a lot of learning journey for me in terms of, new things, new way of doing things. And there's a huge team behind me. Like I might be the face today of this effort, but from a department level, like Dr. Greg Knoll, Dr. Krista Wool from a divisional level, I see Alexander Naseska, who's an amazing project manager here. And, I see Sue and Carol again, who are having great in terms of supporting this. And I can't name everyone because there's probably like 15 subgroups working on this right now. So it is an institutional effort. The hospital believes in this because it's a good idea, quite frankly. And again, like just to take it home, what we are proposing is to increase hospital capacity without building brick and mortar hospital beds. If you think about that, it's just hard not to say yes to it.
Thanks very much, Yusuf. And at this point, I'm going to actually welcome Dr. Greg Knoll to come down. He's the chair of the Department of Medicine, just to provide some closing remarks here. And as he comes up, you're going to see a QR code that's going to show up on the screen for the session evaluation. This is an accredited session through the Royal College of Physicians, Surgeons of Canada. So if you're looking for a letter of attendance, please complete this and let us know, and we will get that to you. But we also have a question in terms of if you have ideas for future Transforming the Health System series sessions that you would like us to think about and develop, please let us know. We want these topics to be relevant to you and to our hospital and to our university. And so the only way to do that is to get your ideas and bring them to life. So we'll turn it over to Dr. Knoll.
All right, thanks, Jerry. So first of all, I want to thank Dr. McCormick for coming and really sharing his insights. It's been super helpful. And it kind of reminded me of when we first started talking about this was a senior management meeting, I don't know, about a year and a half ago. And then we started a little more digging with Krista Woller and Heather Clark, who's online. And then I think we found you through a news article or something. I remember now it's all kind of coming back to you. And then, but it's really amazing to see how our program's going. And then when you mentioned this 200-bed hospital thing, got a little nervous. So USF, you can't be too good or they're going to cancel the Civic. So we got to be okay, but we don't want to be that good. So that's, it's really fantastic. So thank you, Dr. McCormick. And I do want to thank Jerry and Yusuf and Joanne and Jade for getting this organized. And I hope everyone kind of likes the new format of our rounds. And I think it's a different style from the old school rounds. And I think the participation here was great. And I want to thank everyone for participating and those participating online. I think it's going to be a really a nice type of rounds in the future. So stay tuned. We've got more coming. And please, everyone, continue to show up for these rounds. So thank you, everyone.